Yeah, it's Capital Conversations. You see the title of the video, I don't want to be a landlord. And this one hits really close to home because, as you guys may or may not know, my bread and butter is real estate. So when I hear someone saying, I don't want to be a landlord, it gives me a lot to think about, because I understand when people think landlords, the first thing they always complain about is tenants. But I like to always just give a better understanding of the real estate game, at least just from my personal perspective and how I got into it initially. First got into real estate back in 2010 during the recession. Needed a new way to have passive income besides my 9 to 5, and got my real estate license, which usually, a lot of people start off being agents, but realized that being an agent in New York City wasn't for me. You need a strong Rolodex of high net worth individuals who actually want to purchase in New York City. And the crazy thing is, I did have a large Rolodex at the time of high net worth individuals. I was friends with athletes, entertainers, corporate heads, a lot of people who could purchase in New York, but when they decided to purchase, they almost never bought in New York. I had a lot of people who rented in New York, but when it was time to buy, they would buy in Jersey, over the water. And, I noticed that problem consistently, when I first started out. So then I kind of looked at ways for me to get in the real estate game where it would really benefit me. And it really took one of my friends who was the director at the time of a really large bank's investment group. And they said that, hey, you know what? We're going to put money into Newark. And when I first heard about it, I was like, Newark? Just like anyone else's face maybe when you hear that name, they were like, okay, they're making a sizable investment in that area. And I was like, hey, you know what? I need to get in on this, because that investment group is definitely going to make sure that their investment works out. So I just, got another part-time job and worked 2 jobs, 7 days a week for 3 years straight, so that I could get a down payment on my first investment property out in Newark. And when I told you this property was in Newark, in the hood, this is the numbered streets in Newark. Anyone who knows anything about Newark and the numbered streets, this is not for the faint of heart. But that's where I could afford. Couldn't afford New York City. Price points were just way too high for someone like me starting out. So I bought my first property there in Newark on the numbered streets for the asking price was $210,000, which I knew because of my agent background that the property is well below market. But there was a catch. It was a foreclosure that came with Section 8 tenants. Exactly. When you think of Section 8 tenants and that stigma sometimes that comes with them, this is who they were talking about. And the bank was like, hey, if you want the property for this price, you got to take the tenants too. But I knew that, when the markets turned around, that there was no way you could lose money, at this price point. So I actually just purchased a property with an FHA loan for 3.5% down, which came out to about like $73.50, I believe. But then with closing costs were another $4,000. So all in to purchase the property, it was about 11 grand, 11.50 altogether to get it. Had an occupancy clause, and which required me to have it as my primary residence for 12 months. So it was a duplex, couldn't rent out one of the apartments for 12 months. In the meantime, I had to deal with the Section 8 tenants. And that, let's just say, I understand why a lot of people say they don't want to be landlords, because these were, like, when you talk about tenants, these are really the rougher on the spectrum there. But when I did the numbers, I know it was like, I just got to deal with this. So I made it as easy as possible for them to move. I got my broker to find them another apartment. It took a couple months to get them out, but ultimately, after about 5-6 months, they moved out. Waited the 12 months and rented the upstairs apartment. And that property in the hood of Newark gave me a cash flow about $1,100 to $1,200 clean every month after 12 months. And I held on to it, and 3 years later, I sold it for $385. Purchase price $210, sale price $385 after 3 years. And this is, really, really an area where a lot of people getting into the real estate game, I probably would say, hey, you know what? If you're not built like that, this is not where you want to purchase. But a lot of people don't understand that in areas that are rougher, you can probably get better purchase prices And then ultimately, if you're able to sell it correctly or at the right time in the markets, be able to see a nice, appreciation. But landlording is just a small fraction of the real estate game, and it's one that scares too many of us off. And unfortunately, like you're seeing right now in 2022 with the tightening of the housing market, more of us are the ones who are renting. So right now, we're the ones being affected with the skyrocketing rent prices all over the country. And being a landlord allows us to at least have more say in what's going on and not being, subjected to some of these market fluctuations, these rental prices that are going on right now. And at the end of the day, we really have to focus on what will benefit our community in the long run. And I definitely think that, as of course, making sure we put that caveat in there that Capital Conversations, we're not offering investment advice. I'm just telling you what I did with my first property, and then after that, I just kept going along with it. But it's important to understand that, the old paradigm of us just getting a 9 to 5, working 40 hours a week for 20 years and getting a pension. Very few people have that now. The turnovers in jobs now, as you can see with the mass resignation here, having a job and staying with it until you get a pension is only in select industries now. So we have to start looking at passive ways to get income. And if you don't know, 30% of Black millionaires made their money in real estate. So it's definitely something that I always push for people who are looking for ways to get passive income to consider real estate. But again, we're not offering financial advice here. It's just trying to have that conversation, talking about different ways to get out of the rat race, because just collecting a check every 2 weeks probably is not the best way to go. It's going to be very hard to set aside money to be able to invest after you take care of your primary household's expenses. But being a landlord, the stigma that comes with it is one that I think scares too many people away. And you have to understand that, okay, there are ways to be involved in real estate. Like personally, I self-managed, I self-manage my own properties, but I don't have to. So I don't, I chose to deal with tenants. What you can do is, take a little of those profits if you purchase properly and hire a property manager. Hire the property manager, and then you don't have to ever deal with tenants. But at the end of the day, it's one of the tried and true ways of wealth creation in this country, and it's important for us to be more on the provider side than on the consumer side. As you can see now, with these rent prices going up in 2022, that disproportionately affects African Americans, seeing that we are the majority of African Americans rent versus own. So looking at being a landlord shouldn't be something that scares you away. You just gotta have, understand how you want to get into the game, but then look at it as, as an alternative way for passive income.